All right, welcome yourself into a restorative session, and I want you to have your bolster tipped up on a blanket roll or a block. Blocks work really good when you have your bolster lifted. They work great, but you need 3 blocks today if you're going to use the block under the bolster. Otherwise, use a blanket roll. Then you're going to have your bolster tipped up on the blanket so you make a ramp for your spine. We're going to start out with the back body resting into the bolster setup. So next thing, you have a belt. You got a buckled up belt, so big loop. You're going to place it over your head around the back of the pelvis, so low on the back. And then see if you can guide the belt so it's at the eyebrows of the buttocks. And then place your blocks. This is, I think, the most important part, is enough height under your back and plenty of height under the thighs. And as you shift back, you've got your pelvis centered in front of the bolster. And as you lower back, kind of feel how the waist gradually arches, and also kind of the arching pathway of the hips. It's always so interesting. The longer you do this practice, you kind of arrive sometimes with, okay, what do I feel that is supportive of optimizing circulation into my organs, into my musculature, kind of guiding like a hydrating quality internally. So if the belt is cinched up enough, you'll feel a little bit of a pull across the back of the pelvis. If you were to reach down to your kind of your rear area and bring your thumbs to the back, you could feel the belt kind of push into where the bones are at the rim of the pelvis, and then all the flesh kind of pushes out. That's the idea, right? So you want to feel like your pelvis is in a basin. Well, it is a basin. It's a basic basin. And then guide the blocks so they actually feel that they don't cut into your legs. You might have to turn the block a little bit. And if you happen to have a sandbag, well, this is the time, right? If you want it on your feet, then you've got to kind of toss it down across the feet, or you could start with that. But I generally will use the sand from the heart to the belly because my back is elevated slightly, so I don't like it when the sand just kind of falls down if I have it across. So I place it from straight down from heart to belly. Some of you might prefer the sandbag across, horizontal on the ribs. But after you've used your arms a little bit just to get all the positioning right with your props, just give yourself permission to let the arms fan open and feeling just that relationship of the openness of the chest. Just feeling the weight of the thigh bones and rest into the blocks. And with those thigh bones, with their motion out, the back of the hip socket center, and perhaps you close your eyes and just arrive at the cycle of breath. Just feel the alternating motion of perhaps the pressure of the sand, right? You'll feel the movement of the breathing muscles. If you don't have sand on your core, that's fine. You might prefer the experience of subtle motion of the ribs. You can always take it off. But allow there to be space at the throat, at the neck, even adjusting your blanket under your head so it gives a little bit of traction at the brainstem. Sometimes having just that support at the occiput, kind of feel where the shelf at the back of your head is, and have the blanket layered there. And I like to kind of pull it back and then just kind of feel that traction and let yourself receive the simple balance of openness of our chest, the rhythm of our breath. If you have sand on your core, you're just going to slide that away and stretch your arms over the chest towards the ceiling. Interlace your fingers and push the hands up inside out. First beginnings here, just with the arms moving towards sky. And then as you start to guide the arms back, feel the shoulder, the border of the shoulders, press down into the bolster and motion slowly back. I find that instead of trying to go to the end range, I feel the kind of corner border of my shoulder trying to reach it. And so maybe pushing too far back is not ideal for working on beneficial circulation. Sometimes just jostling these tissues with the arm bones pretty straight, right? They're not necessarily perfectly, fully one line, right? Because they're not sticks, although sometimes you could think of your arms like that if you're drawing a stick figure. But you got the L bones, you got the round bones in the body, but just kind of peel away to feel that reach of the arms. When they begin to feel really different, which might be the whole time, then you back off till you find some balance. And then relax the grip of the hands. That's a relief, huh? And then if you can reach to the buckle on your belt, unbuckle, releasing so that belt is not gripping the back body. And then slide the belt off. And I want you to bring the knees towards about hips distance apart, pointing up. And just swish the knees side to side. What I like to do is put my hands on the blocks here so I don't tend to kind of drag myself down lower than the bolster with my pelvis. You tend to slide on this one a little itty bit at a time. So just let the knees swish side to side. See if you can feel the palms on the blocks, unless you're block averse, okay? But feel that little bit of movement across the thighs. And you're really supported by your bolster, so you won't get out of control here. And then as you shift back center, walk the feet in a little closer towards the pelvis, but I have a wide stance on this one. My feet actually are turning a little bit out because I'm just trying to reflect on how the pelvis is centering. And all of us know about things like lowering all the way down to a squat, and as we mature, that gets harder, knees, things get a little bit disgruntled. So what I want you to work on is this is sort of our squat today. So we're on our back, we're working with the pelvic basin. So I want you to go ahead and bring that right ankle to cross up over to the left knee. Take a ball. Now I ask you to go find a ball now that you're in this shape, okay? And place the ball to the upper outer left hip, okay? So when you place the ball there, you're going to tip the knees towards the left. Okay. All right, so I've got the ball to the upper outer left hip and my right ankle is to the left knee. My knees tip over towards the left. And then as you reach to the right knee with the left hand, remember, you can't really widen out the stance more than you have right here, because once the ankle goes to the left knee, if the knee is upset about it, use the ball and monitor how high it is, right? It only can go so high to the upper outer thigh, correct? But you could use a block to the side of the thigh. You could push a blanket in or another pillow. If it's difficult on the knee, just push things in under that left thigh so you're supported. Some people put their foot on a block. I find just kind of being in space works out well, but some days my foot goes a little further down and the block works, but right now I can't touch my block. So I'm just going to be okay with it. Reach for the right knee, maybe, maybe not. Don't be too aggressive on the placement across the joint here. So as I hold on right across that ligament to the side of the knee, You want to just feel that you can hold and guide the thigh, because it's a big piece, right? A thigh, towards the left or towards your upper body. You decide. Right arm can relax by the side. You can also reach your right arm back besides your head. I like to find that I'm focusing in a zone. And if I just add too many things to it, then I can't really kind of feel the specifics in this area to try to loosen up, and also to bring some lubrication here, right? Optimize circulation into my back muscles and my hip. If you're too far down the bolster, you can always reset, slide back up so your back is comfortable. I'll take a few more moments here. If you're getting some fatigue, you can always come out sooner. And you can always move the ball further down the side of the thigh. But you kind of learn about the adjustment on the skin layers when you use the ball. Kind of like the ball for that reason. It's a responsive surface into our top layer, our skin. Okay, now, even if it's not the most intense hip stretch you've felt, that's okay. We're just kind of working on remodeling the tissue a little bit slowly. So take your block, not your block, your ball. I got a block. Take the ball, place it. So you're going to roll it under that right rear, lift the hip up, and you can keep the right foot crossed to the left knee. I like to just uncross it, so my knee gets a different kind of motion. The right knee, instead of it being crossed and turning the knee, now my knee is pointing back up. And then just roll on the ball. Find that the right buttock is on the ball, and the skin that might be pulling across and getting that glide and cross fiber is likely at the higher part of the buttock. There's no reason why you can't place the ball a little lower or to the side of the buttock, closer to the piriformis, like towards the lateral rotator. And then your hips really have to kind of sway side to side. It feels good. So if it crosses over the fibers and it feels like it kind of drops into a notch and then it pulls across, just get some flow into that glute. A little bit of glute motion. The right leg again can kick. You can lower it down on the floor. Even if you find a knot in that area, you can just rest into it. And just a few more moments. And feel, if you let the leg stretch down, you might feel the foot turn out. You might notice the opposite leg, how it helps your balance, clearly. And then as you come out of that side, we're going to keep the ball on the right side. Just leave it there on the right. If you need a reset, you're going to put the ball to the side of the upper right thigh. If you slid down the bolster a tiny bit, you can just push into your hands and push back so you're supported. Okay? The bolster is hopefully going to emphasize that natural movement of the ribs open. Right? Just lying on it is great with some height. So left ankle lifts and crosses over to the right knee, right? Sometimes I'll back up and kind of reflect on how did I get that across on the other side? What muscles do I mobilize, right? Do you move your hip at all? Or do you just push out of the leg bone? Right? So kind of use everything you can. Like if you hold on to your hips, you're moving the knee out, but also using the hip to move the knee out and cross the left ankle to the right knee. Okay. Remember, you got your ball on the right side. You're going to lean to the right, and you're going to maybe take your time going a little bit back and forth, kind of adjust. How should my right foot be? Should it be further down? This side, if I let my right foot slide down on the side of the bound foot, I can get my foot over to the block pretty easily. But again, I like to hold on to the knee and draw it across, but you might prefer not holding your knee and just let the block hold your foot or the side of your heel and let the arms relax down. That's okay. You can see that this has some familiar pathway that like a pigeon pose would. They're all pretty much, there's only so many shapes that we really are creating to work with the circulation in our muscles in these practices. But we just changed from being on our back to sitting into it or lying on our side. It's all good. Turn over in the tissues. Yeah. If holding the knee, it does really feel that you're kind of sealing the shape of focus here. That might be the best for you. This is kind of where we started with this one, as you hold the knee. Lean into the ball, that right side on the ball. So it's besides my right thigh, right there. It's touching it. So let the spine feel centered. And now feel what happens if you can keep a hold of the knee as the knees come back to center, or do you prefer to let go and then bring it back? So sometimes like helping it along, like you hold the knee and then you bring it back, might be an interesting thing to just try for coordination sometimes. I like to play with it. And then as we take the ball to that left side, I like to uncross the leg, then lift up the rear, just roll the ball into the left buttock. And in fact, if you like massaging more of the lateral part of the hip area, then you don't have to roll it very far underneath, right? You can just kind of let it be on the very side balance, right? So it's on the corner here. Yes, you could bring the ball right underneath the rear, right? So it's really at the glute medial border. That's what I like to do, is go right to the glute medius, right on the border, and then let my hips guide. You know, the nice thing about having something under your back on this one is that you can depend on that for support, and then you can move your hips side to side. You could just kind of coast a little bit to the right with your rear, and then feel that you kind of dig a little into the ball. So if you're not really finding, you're right on the kind of the rim of where the area feels really tight, you just play with it. Maybe you move the ball a little over, and hopefully you've got a ball that's got little knobs on it, because that actually just got a smaller one. And it makes it a little bit more massage because it's smaller. You know, some of these are, obviously you can get a 5-inch one, and so it helps it so it's not quite like the tennis or the tune-up ball. It's quite a bit bigger, but it also gets a little bit more work done, I guess you could say. It pulls the skin. The bigger ones are good too because it's a wider surface. So there's an argument for all of them. But we don't have to argue. Okay, so feel the shift a little side to side. Now, when you press down to the ball the last time, see if you can let the knee just release out. Okay, just find that positioning of circulation. And then as you start to shift your pelvis back to centering, so you're not on the ball per se with the weight, you're going to just place the ball center of the knees or thighs, whichever you can reach the ball to, right? And squeeze and release. You take a few moments just moving awareness of the leg musculature. And the ball might fall a little bit when you're doing this. Mine just did, so I'm just going to see if I can adapt and still get some good conscious work here. I tend to like the ball pretty high up, right center of the knee bones. It feels good there. It feels like I'm able to position the awareness in my leg bones, you know, really figure the sensation sucking around the bone, right? The muscle kind of suctions into it. So the next time you squeeze the ball, feel if you can let the arms reach elbows out. Cactus. I relax my squeeze. Okay, squeeze the ball again. And then extend the arms maybe back. Okay. And if you still haven't popped a ball, that's okay. Maybe it's not going to pop today. And release. Okay, now remove the ball off to the side, and we're gonna roll to the side and take our belt. And if your belt is unbuckled, go ahead and buckle it up. And make a big loop. This is for boat pose. All right. Even if you don't have any water around you, I'm sorry. But I'm going to make a big loop. This is probably ambitious. You probably think I'm taller than I am here, huh? But what I'll do is I'll take the loop, and what I think is helpful for this is to sometimes just sit and let the legs extend. Okay, this is a blend of a forward bend, right? So it's a core centering position. So we've got the belt in a big loop. We place it around our head, around the hips. It's not going to stay at the hips. It's going to drop though. Okay. I'm just going to kind of feel where my leg bones extend. And feel when the legs are close-ish. They don't have to be, a uni leg. You kind of notice your sitting bones, how the sitting bones center, and then the pelvic basin, right? Since you were just arching, it felt really nice to do that. Now it's like, how can I sit and feel comfortable in my back? Maybe it's not possible in that position. So you're going to bend the knees and then reach down to your feet. So you got plenty of belt, so you don't have to work too hard to get your feet. But as you bring the belt to the upper back area, we could call this upper backish, but I place the belt around the, kind of right at the armpit zone. And then sometimes it's nice to have, like I said, a lot of length there. So I'm the knees bent. My knee angle is about, if I put a block under my knees, the block is at the second setting, just play with it. You might as well play with the block and go, okay, this is practice. I'm trying to figure these things out. All right, so I've got the belt at the arch of my foot. That's about where I like the belt. I'm pushing back. Now, if I've got the block under my legs, I could say I'm doing a little bit of a boat pose. I'm not going to give full credit, but I'm doing it. I'm giving myself the motion. So I'm going to push back, make sure that the belt buckle is not pushing into your knee or your foot, and that it's in control. It's not going to unbuckle. Bend the knees, and again, you might bring your hands up to where the belt's at and pull back with the hands on the belt towards your chest and see if you can get the legs to lift up. There's so many, I think, fun ways to work on boat pose. It just makes it like getting into it interesting. Right? Interesting has the word in. So, the block is good. I've seen this taught where you just have a chair behind the legs and you just balance on the chair. Or you just stack up things, or all kinds of furniture. You see in Iyengar yoga, use all the benches made for just one pose. I wonder if anybody has like a house of Iyengar furniture. That would be fun. Somebody does. Okay, so lean back. Now, if this is a lot of pressure on your back, yes, I want you to feel not like pain pressure, but the belt is really holding your back. So if you have your bolster behind you, you can lean into it a little bit. But feeling now, this works out really good for me to have my block under the back of my knees to get up. So imagine if you stacked your blocks up under the backs of the knees, right? So, if you feel like I like the boat pose, well, I sort of like it, and I want to work on it, you can just do things like this, right? You can place your blocks in 2 blocks at the second setting, behind the backs of my base of my hamstring, and then I lean back, and isn't that fun? Cynthia's not so sure. It's not really that fun. I'm going to do this because I'm signed up for the session. So the blocks are, I think, amazing. If you're not using the blocks so well, you got to try some new things today for me. So lean back. Okay, last few moments. Feel that your body, the core body, which includes where the belt's at, we'll call that some sort of a core piece. You're letting your body push back. Now, for me, my neck can get a little forward on this, so I'm going to kind of trust it, find what's the right amount of contour in my upper back. as the arms can either be down, no problem. Of course, you could do a pose of reaching, but you're trying to instill this awareness in this midsection, okay? Now, just give a sense of bending your knees. Doesn't have to be a lot. But when you bend the knees, it's probably going to pull your back a little forwards. So if you got a block stack, you might have to get rid of that because that's not going to be helpful. Okay. Hold the belt perhaps. Bend the knees a little bit. See how much you need to flex into the legs. Pull on the belt with both hands. And then as you start to lower down. Oh, okay. Take the belt off your feet, off your whole body. And then let's turn your face away from the wall. And I want you to take your bolster. And if you need a blanket under your knees, get one. Place it under your knees. If you feel like, I'm okay without the blanket right now, that's fine. What we're going to need is our blocks to the other side of our mat. So just kind of stack them up over there. And I'm going to go blanket roll. I'm going to keep this blanket and kind of unfold it on the other side. Okay, so I want you to come to a prone, like a locust beginning position. So the knees are as wide as the bolster. When I lie down, my bolster is going to be at my thigh a little bit here. So as I lower down onto the bolster, for me, it feels like it's a little intrusive on my leg, but I want my hip flexors to get a little bit of support. So take the time to really reach forward with your hands on the blanket and the arms reaching, as I mentioned, but also the legs. Knees are up. So kind of play with this, like figure out where should the bolster be? Should it be a little bit further forward? Right, or should it be touching the legs a little? Okay. Right, you can kind of play with that. So for me, I'm thinking, I'm going to go a little forward and then center down. So basically the front rim of my pelvis, right, feels the bolster. That's key. If you don't like your thighs, being pressed into the bolster, that's fine. Pull the blanket in so you can bring your elbows out wide and relax your forehead onto your hands or your forearms, however your forehead touches. And really take the time here to now relax the knees and relax the rear. Right, all rear things, right? The back, the spine. And just feel the pressure of the front body into the bolster, right? The breathing body. Kind of the belly nest, right, into the bolster. Okay, now when you do lift up your head this next time, take a moment to push the feet into the wall and let the knees kind of extend. I think the idea of them rising up is probably not realistic because I don't think your knees are going to go any higher in this shape. But the pressure of my feet at the wall is kind of significant. So I don't want to walk my feet very high up on the wall. So I feel the stretch of my foot at the base of the wall. But see if you can bring the hands down so you almost go to that Sphinx pose. I like this entry into starting to strengthen my posterior corridor, I like to say. This core is overused. So I put the push down into my elbows, and I'm just gonna let my head turn side to side and just feeling a little bit of motion in my neck. Of course, you can tilt your ear to your shoulder, that's fine. You'll kind of like that work, but just side to side turning, so you're trying to let your head turn to look over your shoulder. Turn to look over the shoulder. then come back center. Hopefully your knees are fine with this one. Your knees are up off the ground. And then see if you can let the shoulders try to shift back. So I'm going to stretch the arms back besides me, palms towards the sides, like Superman kind of look here, locust pose. But try to get the shoulders to roll a little bit back. It's only a moment, right? It's not going to be an eternal pose, okay? But none of them are. So kind of feel what your back has to do, right? You're kind of the matrix here in my lungs, in the back. Clearly this organ system is getting a lot of energy. So find the tone in the kidneys. And they can use a lot of love right now, right? It's hot. Flushing out. And then we'll bring the hands to the ground and then the elbows by the sides and just reach the chest forward. Bring the knees lightly down to the ground. Okay, now come back and turn the bolster across the mat horizontal. And then lean your hips into the bolster. You might crawl your hands a little forward so your knees are not pushing the floor. There's no reason your knees have to grind into the ground. I don't see any purpose in that. Maybe it's something we've seen a lot, but just find that you're trying to stretch into the front of the thigh here. Thigh stretching. Doesn't feel like a thigh stretch, but it's definitely connected to the hip flexors here. Okay. Now as we lower down a little bit to the knees, because pushing in our knees a little helps us mobilize. But if you can't, you will find a way to modify things. So the next position really is we're going to shift back. We're going to move our bolster over to the side yard. If you have a blanket under your knees, use that. And then grab a block for each side of your mat in the front. And take a few moments just forward, hip stretching. See, this will feel really quite deep because you don't have a bolster. And then the knees back. Or sorry, the hips back. The knees are back there, aren't they? Stretch the chest. Okay, now when you come forward, I'm purposely trying to keep this wide extremity thing going on. So my hands are far up, forward, and out. And my knees are too. They're farther apart. Okay, now when you come back center, hands closer in under the shoulders if they're not already. Bring the knees towards each other. Again, use a blanket if you need. And then we'll take the right foot. And we're going to take a step forward, but let's use our blocks and have a moment where it's meaningful, where the hands are on blocks, any height that works for you, okay? Lowest, second, third height. The left foot pushes into the wall. The knee comes up now. And our work is in reaching the right hand to our sacrum. That's it, just that position for now. And see if you can keep the ribs centering down. Ideally, you move your right rib spaces down to the leg, but it might require you to have this block on the left side a little bit higher, right? That doesn't mean you have to touch down to your leg, but some of us it's just a big strain, okay? The whole thing is a big strain. Okay, now bring the right hand down if it isn't already. And I want you to try to step that left foot forward. So if the right foot needs to come in a little bit back because of balance, then push the right foot back. Use your blocks at the same height, okay? Step the left foot forward. And just take a wide stance forward bend. Just feel where the knees are softening. Make a move so that you feel better about it. If it doesn't look like it's the way it should look, then see if you can toss that mentality away. Just feel the knees bending. And then if possible, you're going to stretch the hands farther forward with the blocks and lower your head down so the head goes below the heart. Or you'll bring your hands to hold your elbows and just flow the weight of the brain down towards the floor. Keeping the shoulders in that momentum. I like to do elephant swing, right? So you make figure eights with the hands holding the elbows. Elephant swing meaning you're searching for peanuts or something. But as the elbows center down and outwards, you can certainly just drain out, let the arms dangle. But just feeling the perspective at the brain stem here. So how can you let that area release? And let's keep going with that. So we're going to take a wider stance. Some of you know, down dog and so forth, but we're going to take that perspective in this next one. So I want you just to take if you need a block, I would just go with one on this. And actually go with two if you feel the security is important. So scoot the feet a little closer. Don't pop your head all the way up to the ceiling. That's going to be disruptive, right, to your blood pressure. So keep it low. And then let the right foot step back. And we're going to turn to our right side with all our upper body to the right. Take a wide stance so the right foot might touch the wall. I'm pretty comfortable with them just kind of on the mat, wide reach. And then taking your blocks maybe a little further down, maybe all the way to the lowest setting. And stretch the arm pathway. So your head is between the arms, maybe. So this isn't everybody, right? If some of us might have our blocks higher and stretch forward and feel like this is better for our spine, okay? Right, if you're healing in that area, this might be the better approach because it creates that natural curve, right? If you feel like, oh, this is cooling because it's cooling in our bodies, right? To have the forward bends like this. It should be cooling for you. If it's stressful, then you make the stance a little smaller, just not so wide. We can't be in a forward bend all day, but they are quite cooling. Okay, so as we feel the arm structure reach, some of you might bring the hands to the ankles, some might bring the hands to the floor. Some might hold the back of the head just lightly and give a little traction. Take a few breaths here. Okay. Now, as far as the way that you might be treating the legs, because you want to make it cooling, probably pulling the thigh bones up is not going to cool you off. It's going to warm you up. Just kind of notice different ways that we can energetically be in the shapes is I think kind of interesting. So as you come back forward with your blocks, perhaps, right? You can do any movement side to side. If it feels good, move your hips a little bit, stretch the inner thigh. But then at some point, we're going to walk the blocks back to the left foot and take that lunge with the left leg forward away from the wall and the right heel back at the wall. And you might do a little bit of, I'm kind of caterpillaring my foot, just kind of scooting a little forward on the left foot. And then I'll take my blocks up higher. And, you know, if my knee is off the ground, it's not as much of a hip flexor stretch. That's true. But also, I'm not just pushing my knee in the floor. So some of you might put your knee on the ground and go, oh, that's so much better. And some might go, that's so much worse. So you'll have to find what works. If the knee on the ground is really horrible and you still want to stretch that way, you can always put your bolster under your knee and that might be really nice too. Just an FYI, things that you can kind of play with on these practice patterns. Or how about practice pads, right? Use your bolster. Okay, left knee bending, left hand to sacrum. I want you to keep the lunge, but see if you can push back a little bit, so a little bit less bend in the front leg. Okay. So it's still a forward fold. Okay, feeling a little bit of that pull through that left side of the hip. Okay. All right, now we're going to keep the bend of that left knee a little farther forward and then take a bolster if you can. And I want you to slide it across underneath your thigh. Okay. And if you need a blanket under your knee behind you, I'll have to be honest, I think I'm going to want that. So I'm going to get the blanket and drag it back. So it's right behind. Now you can have the blanket height low. You can make it wadded up a little bit. I bet you're going to prefer it to be somewhat low. So you have some layer, you have kind of, you terrace the props, right? You have a little bit of height difference. Then lower the back knee, have padding. Keep that stretch through the right front thigh here, stretching through. Okay, and then we're gonna walk the left foot over to the right. Now, if you decided pigeon is out of your repertoire for now, it's okay. You might have been doing that before, but maybe not today. So I'll show the pigeon pose first, and then I'll show a modification. So the left knee is across, sorry, the left foot is across, the knee is forward. And as I'm here, I'm gonna let my right foot push a little bit into the wall and then guide the elbows down on my blocks. I love having blocks on this one. If I push down further into the floor, go farther down to the shape. No, you're really trying to kind of induce that circulation through the wrapping of the muscle, right? The fascia. So I think that having that little bit of pulley system into these bones is good. Now, if you're modifying, you're going to sit and you're going to use the same leg forward and just place your block below your foot and have the right knee supported by a ball. Or if this hurts the knee, you can have the leg straight out and put the ball under the knee. Right, so I got a block, I got a ball under my knee, I can have this new bench or straight, and then you lean forward. So we're still working on the same hip, right? We're just not putting that pressure like pigeon pose. But if it feels fine to do pigeon, I believe it's fine. You know, the key really is to work on this inner leg, the leg pit, this area that's full, so lymphing, right? That's what you're trying to get the circulation. So even if you choose this option, this variation, you could just simply be here and kind of massage a little bit into the inner leg, kind of use your thumbs to get a little bit of pressure, do some deportment. There's so many good things you can do versus just posing. Okay. Right? There's things you want to do to help your circulation, I guess is what I'm saying. It began with the yoga poses and then we changed. We started doing something else. Okay, feel the inner thigh stretch. Take a few more breaths. We're trying to lean a little forward. Everyone has to go as far down as they can, but tilting. Now feel how the back muscles, if you're switching sides, right? If you have your foot on the block, you're just going to change the foot that's forward, that's all. But as you switch sides in the seated pigeon, feel if you can roll into the left hip and then use that mobility to cross the right leg forward and then let the left leg stretch back. So you're kind of working with, you know, kind of like break dancing, right? You're kind of swinging around. It's kind of the work you're trying to do, swish back with the leg. Kind of interesting how the hip flexibility is, you know, kind of remarkable in this shape. But if it's past the hip feeling and now it's a knee feeling, then it's time to try a different variation. That's when you kind of know it's not what's meant to be for the moment. So if you're a pigeon with the right foot across, my right foot is across and it's touching to the bolster. It's not on top of the bolster at all. That might work for some of us. If you're not going to be in that variation, don't worry. Right? You can take a seat with your right foot on and you can bring the block higher and just stack them up. Okay. That doesn't mean it's easier though. It does mean it's more stretch. But for some of us, it's easier in the knee. So that makes all the difference in the world. So the ball under the opposite knee, whether the opposite leg is straight, the ball is below the actual whole back of the knee, or just the side of the knee, and then we lean forward. Okay. So this is quite a hip stretch, right? If I have the blocks like this, and you can always stack them up, and like you can make this block higher. Right? A little intense, I'd say, to work on the hip that way. Keep it simple. Okay, those of us in pigeon, right? We've got our right leg forward, our left leg is back. We all have a right leg forward. And we're going to start to work in combing through the ribs in a few moments. So Feel where the top of the back leg extends, goes in pigeon. Feel where the spine is in its arch for all of us. Breathe. Steady the focus, maybe close your eyes, inside feel. Okay, now come on up. Shift the left leg forward. If you're sitting on the bolster with your foot onto the block, we're just going to shift back towards the wall. Do a little circular action with our bones and slide off the bolster and push the bolster to the center of your mat. And then we're going to set up for side sage. So I want you to have a block at the back. So I would stack up. I prefer the block low, then a block on the highest setting towards the right when I go into this right arm. So I'm going to push it a little further over to the right side of my mat. And then I'm going to get a hold of all my blankies and I'm going to stack them up into quarter folds or so on the other side of my bolster. Right? So I want to have a good space between the bolster and the blankets for my arm. And I'm always surprised at how often people will still put their arm on the blanket. But that's not going to help you open up the chest and stretch the deltoid very much. So just let the arm be between. Now, if it's hard on your shoulder or your arm doesn't like the firmness of the ground, just put a little towel down. But you want to have some height here for your neck to get a little stretch. I like the ball. I like the sand on this one. I definitely find the ball has been helpful with observing alignment. So even if you feel like I don't need a ball, if you don't have a ball, your knee's going to turn in, and eventually that could be wreak a little havoc on your hip joint. So might as well use something, whether it's, if you don't like the ball, you can use a pillow or something too. But what I have here is kind of the same as pigeon. Here we are, the same thing again with the leg. It's no different. We're just on a different part of the mat here. So my right leg stretches back, but I'm not putting personally all my chest pressure down. My left leg bends. If this hurts your knee, you can scissor kick it a little bit. You're going to get a hold of your sand, put it maybe on your hip, maybe no sand at all. And then lower down onto your blanket stack and reach overhead. This worked out magically, doesn't always, to have my block supporting my arm. Even if your initial touch down to the block feels a little bit tense around the kind of onto the upper sleeve, you might feel kind of jostle the tissues. Maybe do a little bit of shoulder rolls, little small nudges of the shoulder bones. It's your shoulder to figure out, isn't it? So that weave of muscles from the chest, from the ribs, into the arm piece, the shoulder, right? The rotator cuff. Be kind of curious here. So if you don't want the blocks, you don't have to use them. You can clearly bring the hand towards the floor or on the side. This can be nice. All right, so let your eyes close if you can. Let the weight of your head relax into the blanket. That's key. You can use 2 blankets, you can use 1. But finally, let the weight of your head relax. On the side of your head or the back. If you decide to roll onto the back, probably your arm position will change. But it's really important that you find a position where the neck is comfortable. And let that be where we now investigate here in the rib cage, expanding, relaxing. And your left arm be passive in the side body. Feel just the right amount of mobility, not too much, not too little. Bolster kind of is pushed into your left ribs. Okay, now when we shift, what I want us to give a little focus to is those front thigh bands again, the thigh land here. So as we move the arm from the block or the side of us, we just move our sand away. It usually doesn't take much to drop that. And then as I turn, I try to let my head just be heavy. Tricky piece, right? Just to let your hands push, let your head be heavy, and then turn towards the bolster. And I want you to find your way so that you can kind of move your bone structure. So as if your legs didn't really have, they couldn't really help you. So I always find it interesting just working with all parts of our population, like how would I use my core? So I'm going to try to reach forward. And yes, I'm going to push with my hands a little more. And I'm going to slide my feet back and then try to lengthen. Now, we did this earlier, right? We had the bolster just like this. So feel if you can lift up your chest a bit more than usual. Feel if you can push a little bit into your feet so maybe your knees lift off of the ground. Breathing. Upper back is working, lungs, checking all the boxes. Okay. Now turn the hands out, so you really have to muster a little bit of focus into the arms. But maybe close your eyes and feel how much you can lower down your head a little bit so your back feels the right amount of reach. I don't want you to overdo it. Feel the front of the thighs. They hinge so much, so it's like almost as if you could never get enough of this one, but they just are always hinging. So the glutes are active here, my knees lower back down. Okay, and we come back and we shift to the other side. So we're going to turn to side sage on the right hip, no big deal. So left thigh stretches back, right? You kind of continue this hip flexor, this motion in just the front of that left thigh. Again, you don't have to go as far as possible. Feel what's the reasonable amount of movement. And once you lower down a little further, you might find, oh, yeah, once I let my ribs lower and press into I think the idea of telling them to press is not probably wise. Just let them release. Breathe. Use a blanket stack under your head purposely. Get a hold of your sand. Remember, sand can be on the ribs, it can be on the hip. I think some of us like this idea of the weight bearing on the hip itself, but it's fine if you want to try it the other way. You can kind of fiddle around with getting the ball in the right spot. That could take you a few minutes here. So you can use your other foot, and then you'll stretch to the left arm either up, or it might be down the side. Right? It doesn't have to be this. If this is extreme for you, if arm reaching is extreme, be careful, right? So when I feel this reach, I'm trying to connect the parts, right? That's kind of part of the reason I do this is like I want to feel kind of a full body connection. And that only happens if I get each of the segments and work them separately. And in some shapes, they merge, right? There's an integration. So let the weight of your head relax. On this side, I tend to roll the back of my head more for comfort on my neck. I sleep more on this side. That's part of my habit probably. So I just habits. So my work is on letting the weight of my head relax. And feel the reach. Feel also the reach of the hip. This is really huge, I think. So the arm is obvious because arms do a lot of this during the day, even if they're smaller movements, they just get things. But our hip isn't quite the same, although it has similar properties as far as the joint goes, but you know, it's just moving the leg bone, right? The hip movement into the leg. So try to stretch it back and feel now how the ribs pull both sides, feel equalizing the stretch of leg and arm. Caution on the knee, right? You might have to baby a little bit. You might even have to have the knees together. This might not work the whole time. And of course, that takes out your hip flexor stretch quite a bit, right? It's almost gone. So just do what feels best for your knee. Sometimes you just work on the ribs. More breaths here. Breathe. It only helps. And now as we come out, we let the left arm lower down. Feel the waist just gently stretch. And we actually go into our back next. So careful here, bring the left thigh towards the right, take the sand off, maybe that's first. And if you can find out where, as you lean to your right and you come on up, take a hold of your bolster and sit on it. You don't even have to take a hold of it, just sit on it. And move your blankets back so that you've got just one under your head when you lie back. And your blocks, yeah, put them off to the side so you can easily reach them. Okay, easy reach. Ball is between the knees. So when we're on our back, we're going to try to move the ball to try to get the back muscles back into some symmetry because they've been turned one side to the next. So my tailbone's on the center of my bolster and then a little farther forward. And then as I lower back, this feels good to get on our back now. We've been on the back much today. Just a little bit. So I want you to feel the ball kind of move this way. So I've got the knees holding onto my ball, and I'm going to swish the knees forward and back. So I get a little bit of movement, and it's kind of trying on my hip, like more work than the hip wants to do, but it'll be valuable in a few moments. So you want the weight of the thigh bones. Eventually they're going to rest into the back of the hip sockets, but right now we're just moving. So if you can't really see, I've got my ball between my knees actually, and I'm just kind of moving it. So if I have my hands holding the ball, this is easy. I got this movement now. But with my legs, they're not quite as coordinated. I got a ways to go. Okay, gently clutch the ball and then let the knees go side to side. Your feet can touch together. They usually get really close on this one, but the knees have a separation with the ball. Or you can use a block. If you don't like the ball, it just feels like a little too smushy, then use a block. If you do use a block, use the lowest setting, like the most narrow. And people prefer that. Okay, arms are comfortably out. If you've got stuff in your side there, kind of move it so your arms aren't too wonky. One high, one low. Just let your eyes close and warm up that lower back. So feeling when you rock to one side, just that moment of movement and stillness, they kind of merge right at the end range. And then take about two more, one each side. Back into center. And we're going to take the ball to the side, and I want you to get a hold of your belt. Okay. Just when you thought you had all your props, where did that go? Okay. Position your bolster so it's satisfying under your pelvis. Don't let it be too low. That's probably the key. Is a bolster high enough at your back is more soothing for most of us. We think it should be lower, that'll be easier, but at least with my experience working with people, I've almost always found that that's agonizing for people. So you do you. If that works better, that's fine. But scoop up the belt with your feet. And, feet scooping things is, again, different because we use our hands for that. So just trying some of these things on is probably delightful for your nervous system, for your coordination. Change it up. So I'm just going to invite you to push your feet out wide on the belt. So you're in a float, leg float. And I've got a wide stance. Of course, my belt is connected, but it doesn't have to be. Some people prefer to do this one with the belt apart, right? So they can hold with the hands. I've seen this with people placing the belt around their ribs, so they'll make the belt, they'll make sure that it's as big as possible, right? Long as possible, and then place it around the rib cage, around the back, so they are very controlling their back muscles. You'd be surprised at how interesting that is. If I put the belt around my back and then I hold, I'll try it just so we can see if it will work, huh? You do need a 10-foot belt for this one. I think this is a 10, but if you got a 6-foot, it's not going to work at all. See, most of you are way taller than me. Okay, so then I have the belt around my ribs. Very nice for my back. So if you don't have a 10-foot belt yet, this would be a reason to get one. Just to hang out in this, just be cactus pose and draining out through the legs, like inflammation, right? Obviously, we have fluid retention just living in the body with the feet at the base. And the elbows are out. So you choose. If you're kind of like, oh, I just can't get the belt connected like that, no worries. You can have the belt like we did before, like that. It doesn't work, it's just fine. I think this is a little more challenging though, when I have the belt like this. I've been doing this long enough that I don't feel that challenge with it, but I think most people are getting going with it. This can be tough, okay? So it's shaky, the legs aren't that more flexible, or they're just stronger. That could be what it is. So they respond different. So feeling those differences. So if you've never tried the belt behind your back, let that be your homework this week. Just try it. If you need to get a bigger belt or to put 2 belts together, you can do it that way. I've seen. Okay, take a few moments here. Let the spine regenerate. Hamstrings get a little pull. Mostly it's the adductor circulation. Most all of us need this circulation here. For bodies that have immune systems, here's a good one. Legs stretching out. Vulnerable shape though. Clearly it's awkward. Okay, now bend the knees, and if you have the belt around your ribs, you got to take it off. You can bring it over your head and hold onto it. And then hold the belt and slide the feet together. Hold the belt with both hands, not just feet. Walk the hands up the belt. Bring the left leg out of the belt, left foot down, stretch it down and relax it. And then just feel the belt closer towards the heel. And you can kind of pull on the belt a little side to side and kind of wiggle the foot. Just feel that depth of awareness in the hamstring. The belt is lower to the heel. And now bend the knee. Slide the belt a little closer to the ball of the foot, a little higher up. And kind of wiggle it. Of course, you can wiggle your foot, stretching through the base, bending through that right knee. You decide how much bend you have, how much flex you have in the foot. This would be a good one to kind of feel the options of the positioning of the pull of the foot, of the knee. Okay, and then take the left foot up into the belt. Now switch sides, lower the right leg down. And as the leg releases, just kind of visualize you have a little sandbag on that right thigh. Just see what happens when you keep a hold of the belt. If you're kind of antsy to use sand on these, I suppose you, of course, could on the hip flexor and quad, but just trying to keep it so the instructions are a little basic here. So belt towards the heel. On that left foot up. And just kind of feel how the leg, actually the thigh bones, rest into the hip. Right? There's quite a bit going on when you get upside down. And then scoot the belt closer to the ball of the foot, towards the arch. Pull. And pulling is not just hands, it's also the movement of the foot. So even if I pull and pull and pull, I still have to coordinate my foot to move. And then to kind of wake up the leg, that reach of the thigh. Now bend through the left leg. Carefully, you're going to reach up with the right hand and slide the belt off your foot. And as you bring the knees to point up, take a ball, place it between the knees. And let's take a simple shift here. We'll bring the knees to your chest and then push the bolster. Be careful on your back how you guide it down. Just slow. I like to kind of rock the bolster a little bit back and forth. And then once I'm down with the back of my pelvis, it's going to feel like a little bit above your tailbone that touches down. So you can kind of rock on the back of the pelvis and feel the knees go towards the chest. And then make sure that the bolster is just in fingertip reach, like even at your nail. So it's pretty close to you. Now, unless you pushed your bolster and it went all the way down towards the wall, that happens. Lower your feet onto the bolster, press into your heels and lift the hips up. And now keep those hips in that motion of lifting. Arms can be down by the sides. And then lower the spine down. Take it slow, going up and down the spine. So hips sink down, breathe. Inhale, hips lift up. Feel the tailbone in that motion of just reaching under a little bit, not too much, and then guide down. So sometimes just this lift and lower can be actually pretty interesting for how you create reaction in your glute muscles, because we're going to massage them again in a moment. So I want you just to notice when you lift and lower how you kind of park your weight in your body. The great thing about the yoga practice is that we're not parking our weight just in our feet like we do all day long. We're parking it in different places, the whole class, right? So it's a pretty good, cleanse, right, of movement through our bones. So just lift and lower. Let's not add too much information here. Just feel where you park the weight between the vertebrae. And then as you lower down, spinally, kind of visualize it stretching and extending. Okay, the littlest knees to chest, the smallest you need to bring them in to get your ball. Even if you can get the ball without knees in, get the ball without knees in, so that you're not flexing the spine that much. I don't want you to do a lot of rounding, posterior tilt. So as you lift up your hips, you're going to place the ball into the left buttock and massage into that left glute. Kind of in our final spinal here. So this way we have our feet on the bolster, and you can actually pour into the ball a little better. Don't be surprised if occasionally a ball pops on this one, because you put more body weight into it than if you did earlier in the session when we were on the bolster with our back on the bolster. So I like to feel like you're pulling your skin, right? Think about like when you're putting lotion on your face, right? You kind of pull your skin a little bit. It's kind of the same with the glute right now, with the ball. I know that sounds kind of funny. It's not like you're going to do that same thing with your glute, but it is what you're doing with the ball. You're pulling the skin, right? You're remodeling the tissue. So you're trying to press across and then find these little nuggets of, grippiness in the glute. That's what they're good at. They're good at gripping. And then just move the ball to the right side. Okay. So keeping a focus, it's about the same placement, but there's different feelings on each side. So yeah, I find on this one specifically the ball that's a little smaller, right? It gets a little better massage. It's kind of funny. This is what I use for that, but it gets the job done. If you spend more time on it, probably get a little bit more fluid return right into the tissues, a little better remodeling work, but we don't want to spend the next hour doing this rolling, I don't think. So we'll just call it good. So now as you move your body weight press, if you want to keep rolling, go for it. But feel how you go across the muscle, and then you might even feel like the ball gets to the gluteal fold, like right near the crack, right? You can feel like it pulls the skin, and then you just roll out, and then you kick the bolster to the right side of your mat. This is all familiar stuff. Cross the left leg over to the bolster, place the ball to the sacrum area, Could be lower, it could be higher, and then add a sandbag. I would keep the lower leg in a little bend. I wouldn't make it straight on the bottom leg, but that's up to you. Some people maybe just are so used to that schooling that it's kind of hardwired. Their muscles are even like frightened to do something different, but you can probably take a little change, bend the knee, use your blanket under your head, let the left arm stretch open, and just take the shape and receive. Receive the circulation, especially after rolling. You might have some referred awareness into that glute. There's heat there. Relaxing your breath. If it's really intense on your hip, remember you can always put a blanket on top of the bolster. It might actually be just the perfect thing to do to take the edge off if it's a lot for you to get your leg this far over and down. I see that often, right? Just a little bit more height. I think a block under the knee is probably too much height, but I've seen that as well. So take a few more moments, feel the cross fiber in the hip. You can feel the gluteal area, but above that area gets a little bit of stretch. Pull. They slide the sand away if you have that on, and the ball, and then as you bring the knees low and the feet about hips distance or wider, move the pelvis under, kind of feel just the back of the pelvis centered as you move the bolster to the left side. So cross over, careful not to shock the sacrum, so I'm not going to bring the knees to my chest right now. I'm just going to cross my right leg over, so I'm taking a twist on each side. We haven't done many twists today, right? So it's been kind of they can be pretty a lot of heat in the body, right? So we're not doing lots of them. We're doing reclining twists, so that's easy going. As far as the body, just the warming up along the spine and so forth. So this is a little bit more impactful on soothing, cooling, but it does have a little bit of that circulation balance with our hip. As the arm opens out with the right side, the belly moves with the breath. So I've got the ball at my sacrum, got the sand on the exterior thigh. I find it feels pretty good in the right smack dab in the middle. Some people like to park it on the hip or down to the knee, but that muscle on the side of the leg can really use that guidance and support almost always. As long as you're in this body, right? This part, these leg parts right on the side can use that kind of remodeling of the tissue that gets kind of wrapped around, stuck together. It's kind of sticky. Let your head maybe roll to the right, or if it's perfect in center, just keep it there. Okay, now we're going to drain out the legs. So as you move the ball away and the sand down towards the wall, you're going to roll to the left or right, whichever is comfy for you, and take your bolster to the base of the wall. tuck it right into it. So the bolster's got no space between the wall and the bolster, unless you feel like that's easier on your hamstrings, which it might be. So, once you get on your legs up, you might actually pull the bolster away. Give yourself opportunity to try those things. Sometimes we get kind of hardwired that we've got to get our legs perfectly imprinted into the wall or something. But when I roll to the side, I'm on the very edge of my bolster, and I find if I'm on my shoulder, and then I swing the legs up. Of course, after so much practice, you just sort of find your way upside down. Right? We all kind of figure out, how am I going to get there? And some of us maybe kind of slide on our back to the wall, imagine. So if you think this is the only way, it definitely isn't. So, but as you get the height, some people don't have the bolster under them, and then they get the legs up and then they slide it under. So, and that might be a really good tactic. Maybe I should try that again. Okay, so take a sandbag, place it up to either your belly, if you don't want to get it on your feet. If you're feeling like that's tiring to do, that's fine. You might not want your knees to bend that way to get the sand on the feet. That's okay. But if you do put sand on the feet, then have the feet a little bit apart. If you decide not to, then maybe put the sand on the belly. Right? Something a little different for circulation. Because this is clearly going to stimulate that lymphatic drain right down towards the chest, which moves down into the bloodstream, down to the organs of elimination. So just getting the legs upside down is plenty. No sand is required. But if the knees are starting to turn together with the sand on the feet, you might have to monitor that and say, hey guys, you guys don't get too close. And have a little space at the knees, just a little bit. You can feel the tailbone touch down on the bolster and the arms out into a goalpost. Okay? They can be at this height or they can be lower. You don't want them overhead. You want the circulation, the blood pressure to lower. So therefore, I don't want them above my heart. So just at that level, you can go into cruise mode here and let the eyelids rest, whether with eye pillows or not. If you need some more covering, like a blanket, anything is fine. But gather your attention on the even rhythm of breathing. So this is one where you really can feel the actual weight of the thigh bones resting into the back of the hip sockets. This is actually a little bit of a mild hip opener. It's a core strengthener. All good things come from getting your legs upside down. Yeah, feel the shoulders roll back and downwards. Feel the chest just gently. The most simple openness of the chest. And just feeling the floor and the bolster supporting your back body. Now bend the knees, be aware. You can do this with the eyes closed if you like as well. Just shifting the feet from the wall if you've got sand. I'm going to find your way to remove it. It might be tossing it overhead. It might be just guiding the hamstrings and all the leg muscles together to get the feeling. It's kind of fun to do this blind and just kind of feel how you get your sand off. And then as the legs go up, you could bend the knees a little bit. You can do kind of this almost cobbler's pose, but really just feel the weight of the thigh bones in the back of the hip. Just the smallest bend of my knees. Right. It's interesting having that awareness of the knee, sometimes more than you want, but feeling where you're just behind the deepest, even a slight bend, I guess, just a slight bend, feel the thigh touch. And then when we start to bring the thighs in towards the chest, you can hug the back of the legs, but there's nothing wrong with pushing into the shin, the tibia area, just kind of slide down that tibia. It just doesn't get a lot of touch, right? Just kind of pressing into the tibias, about the same pressure with your palms. And then let the thighs move a little side to side. Let the least knee pressure as possible here. Just side to side. Feeling the back of the pelvi. It's a pelvis lying down, right? It's a pelvi. And then roll to the side. Take ease. If this is too much on the knee to go this way, bending the knees, you can always push away from the wall, kind of slide back, and then roll to the side and guide back and then come on up. There's different ways to come out of that. But take a seat. If you need to bring the legs straight in front of you, if you find a little bit of crossing works out fine. Even if your bolster is a little bit turned, see if you can find your back towards the wall. And feeling the breath and the awareness down into your neck and your throat. Sometimes we feel neck is a little different than throat, but they're awfully close. So as the hands reach up to space together in front of your heart center, take